know me have to overcome. Stand firm and not lean for no one. You can set up your own program. Have the whole world a sing out the slogan. No time in a slow down. Plus, we
solid. Johnny with every Lord. Don't panic, cause every day's another episode. And through it all, we have to hold on. Face your fears and fight no matter how long. Solid. Johnny with every Lord. Don't panic, cause every day's another episode. And through it all, we have to hold on. Face your fears and fight no matter how long. Another episode. And through it all, we have to hold on. Face your fears and fight no matter how long. Solid. Chatting with every load. Don't panic, cause every day's another episode. And through it all, we have to hold on. Face your fears and fight no matter how long. The fight only finish with the weak ones. So when that call you, watch how you respond. Dark, face your fears, fight your demons. Can't be firm, go to a tribulation. He is a heavy load, still a channel. Have a legacy fi build, so me fi carry on. And the dark days pray fi go to the storm. Now give up none time, cause that's what we want. Solid, Johnny with every load. Don't panic, cause every day's another episode. And through it all, we have to hold on. Face your fears and fight no matter how long. Solid, Johnny with every load. Don't panic, cause every day's another episode. And through it all, we have to hold on. Face your fears and fight no matter how long.
solid, me solid, just like a rock. Spiritually we fight a lot. They trap them, said Jah cancel that. You just can't stop me, not try do that. Got to be careful of negligence. Move wise, use up your intelligence. Guard of honor like the presidents. Progress and its evidence. Me no care how much time they want turn me down. Things say me woulda tumble down. Chant to me ancestors big Congo drum. That's why me know me have to overcome. Stand firm and not lean for no one. You can set up your own program. Have the whole world a sing out the slogan. No time in a slow down. Plus with
solid, Johnny with every Lord. Don't panic, cause every day's another episode. And through it all, we have to hold on. Face your fears and fight no matter how long. Solid, Johnny with every Lord. Don't panic, cause every day's another episode. And through it all, we have to hold on. Face your fears and fight no matter how long. Should I no put faith in a man, just look to the east and here Shaddai. But faith without work is dead, so me never stop working yet. All those struggle is real, still I hold it out stronger than steel. Dog man built for this, the high firm. Hustle every day, so paper must earn. No faith in a God, so soon on my turn. When me pray for my way, me not make it wrong turn. Yeah, enough of them want me fall, but him not left my side. So upon Jah my God, now them gonna take my life. Just I don't praise no one but him, so I should die. No put faith in a man, just look to the east and here shall die. But faith without work is dead, so me never stop working yet. Although struggle is real, still I hold it out stronger than steel. So yeah, that I don't try give up none. Life is a long road, sometimes you must fall. But that's not the time for you sit down and ball. When everything else fails, find that Jamaica. No phone, I wish life could have restart. We get the next stripe on a different path. But you feel grateful for anything you want. Don't let you knock off flow by the mercy of God, yeah, yeah. Just I don't praise no one but him, so I should die. No put faith in a man, just look to the east and he'll shall die. But faith without work is dead, so me never stop working, yeah. Although struggle is real, still I hold it out stronger than steel, yeah, yeah. Just I don't praise no man but him, so I should die.
Hi there, here's something that you didn't know. Over the last 4 years, we have commenced construction for 3,858 houses across all income categories, low income, middle income, and even for young professionals. 2,100 of those homes have already been completed and handed over. This is Cummins Lodge, one of those new thriving housing developments that did not exist 5 years ago. 458 houses have already been built here, and people have moved in and are enjoying their new homes in their new life. This is one of the most impactful ways that we are helping people through home ownership, keeping home ownership affordable and empowering ordinary Guyanese to own their own homes, all thanks to the People's Progressive Party civic government. Let me tell you something that you didn't know. This is how a housing scheme is created. In most cases, we acquire land that is forested, that were former cane fields, and in many cases, swamplands. We then have to complete the infrastructure work in each housing area, which includes new roads, bridges, culverts, and drainage. In some cases, we have to dig canals to create land for house lots. Once excavated, these canals are filled with sand to complete this part of the process. With the land preparation completed, the surveyors then have to install piles to demarcate each house lot. New wells have to be drilled in some areas to provide water, along with the installation of the water distribution network. And finally, the installation of the electrical network. And this is the finished product, thriving new housing developments that provide empowerment, stability, and security. And nobody does it better than the PPPC.
I am Janine Anthony. I am very happy to actually get to see the land. I paid for it almost 3 years. This is something really nice. I'll be leaving something for my children to inherit, and I hope to start building as soon as possible.
Well, I'm very happy, and I must say, thank you to the president and all the housing people. Thanks very much. Well, this is a start for the family and for everyone. It's a start for every young couple, and it's very nice to own your own.
Well, I am excited at this moment because it's been a while. I didn't expect it so quick because from people you hear that it takes so long, but I'm very thankful for this process, and I'm happy and grateful, and so I can go ahead with it now. We're currently renting, so we would approach the bank and, take a mortgage and go ahead with our stuff.
And good evening. Welcome to the first episode of Wading into the Controversy. This has been a long time coming, and I'm happy that we started at least. It's International Women's Month. We're celebrating International Women's Week. I think Saturday is International Women's Day. As my lovely co-guests, friends would have informed me. Tonight I have two very special young ladies. They're very dear to me. I've known them for quite some time. Miss Samantha Shio Prashad and Miss Jovan Wilson. I've asked their permission to not to call them by what I normally call them, and they've consented. I normally call Samantha Superstar.
Superstar.
Yes.
Hey.
The first time tonight I referred to her by her last name, Shio Prashad. It was kind of weird.
Very weird.
Miss Wilson, I call her Jovi. I've never called her Miss Wilson until probably tonight as well.
Yes.
So I refer to both of them by those names over the years. Um, let me introduce them to you for those persons who may not know them. These are phenomenal women who have stood out in their field. Um, Superstar, as I call her, is an award-winning entrepreneur, youth activist, and technology advocate from Guyana. Yes, she's the co-founder of Trinity Solutions Inc. and a leader in empowering women in tech through initiatives like Project Code Her. With over 25 years of experience in community work and 10 plus years as a creative manager, she specializes in social media marketing, design, print media, radio marketing, and event planning. Samantha holds a bachelor's degree in computer science from the University of Guyana. She has studied entrepreneurship and innovation at the University of Massachusetts, Lowell, and is currently studying leadership at the University of Cambridge. It's quite something. A Queen's Young Leader Award recipient, she's also a former Facebook developer lead, former CARICOM Youth Ambassador, and Commonwealth Youth Representative, dedicating her career to innovation and community impact. Beyond technology and entrepreneurship, Samantha served as a first responder for domestic violence and suicide cases, working closely with her local community to help women and youths connect with social services from the government and support networks. Her dedication to advocacy, leadership, and social change continues to shape her mission of empowerment and impact. Now you see why I call her superstar. Not many persons in Guyana could boast having a Queen's Young Leader Award. I think that was one of the reasons I started to call you superstar after you won that. So kudos again. Well done, Sam. Now on the other hand, we have Miss Wilson, who's also phenomenal. She's a daughter of the soil. She's a renowned media strategist, communications expert, and thought leader with a degree in tourism, management, and hospitality. Her career spans journalism, branding, and public affairs, earning her a reputation as a bold, articulate voice in national and regional discourse. Having worked in Guyana and the British Virgin Islands, she quickly gained prominence for her fearless approach to media, tackling critical issues, and advocating for equity and accountability. Jovan has worked with the government of Guyana and major corporate entities, ensuring that brand Guyana is represented as strong, united, and progressive. As the founder of 1221 Media, she is a marketing powerhouse, specializing in digital strategy, corporate storytelling, and impactful messaging. Frequently invited to host high profile events, model discussions, and contribute to national conversations, she is widely recognized for her insight, influence, and ability to inspire action. Her advocacy extends beyond media. She is a champion for social justice and institutional accountability. As a survivor of domestic violence, she has been a strong advocate for social societal change, using her platform to highlight issues affecting vulnerable communities. Her ability to merge professional expertise with passionate advocacy makes her a formidable force in public discourse. Jovan Willis is a voice that informs, empowers, and inspires. A fearless leader, shaping narratives, driving change, and elevating Guyana's presence on the global stage. Impressive, impressive. Now, I didn't want to say what my stuff is. I didn't want to say what I've done. You
Who's
know,
gonna do your
I
introduction? Who's gonna introduce James?
no need to, no need to. What is significant that I would have highlighted is that both of you would have had some personal encounter, personal touch when it comes to domestic violence. Um, it is something that has gripped our society, not only today, but for quite some time. But we see it has raised its ugly head again.
Mm-hmm.
And um, Ms. Prashad, what is your take? What is your take
I
on the issue itself? A general overview.
certainly is going to continue raising that head if we don't hold it by the horn. And we got to stop looking at calling out, but calling in people into the conversation, and not just the conversation, but having solutions that are realistic and also workable for our community. We got to look at our schools. What are we teaching our people? We got to invest more into the institution, the oldest institution of family, because we can't just focus on women when men are part of the equation. I think both parties need to play an equal role in the fight against domestic violence and so forth.
Yeah. Well, James, first of all, congrats on your podcast.
Thank
I
you.
think Guyana is in a very interesting time. It's a opportune time and a unique juncture in our history where I believe conversation is going to be at the meat of what it is that we decide to do next as we pivot forward. So I do congratulate you on this because, living in a country that is home to less than 1 million people is very difficult sometimes to have hard conversations. But it takes bravery and it takes courage. Domestic violence for me is a topic I've been long passionate about. And I think it's really plaguing Guyana from the time I was a child. I think one of the challenges we have with this issue in particular is that in order for us to call out domestic violence, it means that sometimes we may have to look at our parents. We might have to call out our uncles, our cousins, our friends. And holding people to account is a very difficult thing to do in our society. But as you look around at the rising numbers and the outrage and the sore that this is in our society, we cannot just continue to let this be another statistic. So the conversation needs to start.
Excellent. You mentioned that you were part and parcel in some way, shape, or form connected to the issue.
Mm-hmm.
Could you share that experience?
Yeah, so domestic violence for me is something I've seen as a child. My family members, I grew up seeing certain members abused. And it's a difficult thing. And that's why what you mentioned about it, it coming from the oldest institution family, that conditioning and that condoning happens from that level. Our kids are born into families and they're conditioned to sort of like accept. It's been so normalized, domestic violence. And we look at the more graphic things at times, like the murders and so on, but really that starts with the little red flags. It starts with how you speak to your partner in front of the children and what the children will now consider to be a normal thing because they can only replicate what they see. So I saw that, and as an adult, growing into a young woman, sort of vouched that would never be me, James. Running from that situation. But sometimes you run from something and you run straight into it. And so, yes, I am a victim of, I would say, a survivor of domestic violence. I have been I used to be in a relationship where I was physically abused, where I was verbally abused. And that's why when situations come up in the media about women not leaving situations, it resonates deeply with me because it's not as black and white as just getting up and leave. It's a tough situation when your emotions are involved, when this person might be all you know. And for a lot of women in Guyana too, we have to think about the financial situation of that woman. A lot of women are feel constricted to a relationship because they feel like, it's a means to an end.
Trauma bonding.
So it's a difficult situation. It's definitely not what the social media experts always proclaim it to be, especially when you've never been in that situation. I really do empathize with, and I just want to take this moment quickly to express my sympathy to all the victims we've lost, particularly in this year, 2025.
It's 5%.
5 women too many.
Yeah.
It's tough. It's definitely tough, and it's going to take a lot of layers to get through this conversation.
Again, you've also, Sam, been part and parcel wrapped up in the issue. How was that?
Dealing with, I mean, the statistics is there, and it's not going to lie. 55% of women from the age of 15 to 64 experience domestic violence or had sexual abuse, physical abuse in that category there. So you obviously in that category, you have to grow up experiencing violence at some level, either by family, going to school, church, your immediate surrounding, even walking on the road. You're not spared from it. And the thing is, the alarming thing is that sometimes we refuse to take action, right? And most of the times women would come, they would tell you their problems, and you connect them with solutions, or you connect them with finding that solution to improve their lives. And they're the ones who saying, we don't want to do this anymore. He loves me a lot. I don't want to continue with this. Yeah. And the culture there, right, promotes. The culture there, right? We're actually harboring this thing in our community. We're harboring this thing in our life, and sometimes it is difficult for some women because they're financially dependent, they're emotionally dependent on the man. Most of us are groomed that we find happiness in another person. So that grooming definitely needs some shifting. We need to shift the conversation. We need to shift the perspective, right? It needs to happen in our school. It needs to happen in our home, and all the institution that is geared towards developing you as an individual.
I hear you. So in other words, we should start training our youngsters in the home that it's not okay. It's not okay to hit someone.
Of course.
It's not okay to be abusive verbally, sexually. Start young, training the children at home, in school, at church, masjid, the temples. Is that a conversation?
The reality is, John, that it has to be a national approach.
Yeah.
When these things happen, we look at the loopholes in the system. We look at the legal system. We look at the police force. We look at the ministries that are responsible for these things, but we don't look at ourselves, right? We don't look at the religious institutions that have to play a role in this. And so for me, realistically, if we want to stamp out this thing, it takes that national approach. And I think we are not even our neighbor's keeper anymore.
That's so true.
We see people being abused next door, hear about situations. And it's not until something really graphic happens that somebody steps forward and said, hey, this was happening for a while. We have to get back to a place where it's our business to protect each other. And I think when we understand the responsibility and the roles that we play in it, I think things will begin to change a little bit.
Go ahead. So go ahead.
I don't think this is the problem, but it's a symptom of the problem, because the issue there, deep root, is something that lies within that person, maybe an experience they had in their childhood, and it's coming out some different way. And sometimes, we are taught to do all the complex calculation and go to different planets, but we don't get teachings in the schools how to cope with our emotions, how to deal with our mental health, and then one of the other things that contributes to all of this too is alcohol. Alcohol, our culture celebrates that, and it has played a major role. And if you look at some of the cases, and a lot of the cases, you'd find influences with alcohol as well.
I hear that. But you mentioned a legal framework. And I must say that Guyana has covered almost all the bases when it comes to the law. We have a specific Domestic Violence Act. We got
Yeah.
a Sexual Offences Act. We got so many, like I said, actually deal with the issue. And in terms of policy framework, we also have all that in
Yeah.
place. I mean, I could tell you the past couple of years, we've been able to reduce intimate partner violence considerably by double-digit percentile. And but again, one thing you guys mentioned touched a nerve with me is the part where Ms. Wilson says we have to be our brother's keeper, sister's keeper. But you know that's not possible in the sense that we're actually taught that don't get involved in husband and wife story.
Sorry.
You know, so if I'm taught that
Yeah.
that I do not get involved in husband and wife story, how do I intervene? How do I do it? Am I a meddler if I get involved? Sometimes what happens in these crimes of passion is that person's turning you and you become a victim as well.
Mhm.
You mentioned about the role of the Guyana Police Force in all of this. The Guyana Police Force, I know, has made a lot of strides in having domestic violence units, domestic violence specific areas in the station
Yeah.
that deal with domestic violence victims. Um, Whether or not we need, for example, a special, like how you have a SVU, whether we need a specific SVU unit to police these issues in terms of fast response, in terms of reacting. This is not the normal police officers now reacting to these situations because you know sometimes it
Yeah.
may take a bit to get through the system. But with all and all of that, I think I've seen a bit too. As a state council, I could tell you of a case in Essequibo. The young lady, and her arm was cut off. And she still decided that she was not going to prosecute the matter, that her family was more important. Him being part of the family
Yeah.
at the time was important more than the assault she would have been suffered. And they're together today. They're living together today. I can't say whether or not the abuse would have continued, but I know they're still together. Um,
And that's one of the challenges that I think the system faces. We often, like you said, we look at the system, we look at the police force, we look at what the
Yeah.
ministry is doing. But a lot of the times, these women stay in situations, and it's not. And you touch on a
Yeah.
very important point, Samantha. Sometimes these issues are deeper than we could imagine. Statistics show that a woman or a person in an abusive situation, it takes them technically 7 attempts to leave. And that is something that I can relate to. When you care about someone, when you consider the circumstances around the situation, and again, I will go back to finance because it is a major factor,
Yeah.
a deciding factor why women stay in abusive situations. A lot of women also don't know of some of the resources that are available. You know, I had the opportunity to visit recently the Ministry of Human Services, and there's so many resources available, including safe houses, including something called the iMatter
Yeah.
app.
Yeah.
And that app really houses all of the resources that are available for women who are or who find themselves in situations of domestic violence. There is also a panic button on that app that allows you to get immediate help because sometimes you might be in a tense situation. You may not be able to make a call, but you could send a message. You could click that button. And also, it's not just through the Ministry of Human Services, but they're also liaising with the Guyana Police Force to incorporate that training into the police curriculum because sometimes even the police force is not as sensitive as they need to be to these cases. So it comes back again to that multi-level approach that we need to have.
You know what I realized a few years ago. Forget about finance, about empowerment. You both touched on two separate issues of empowerment. You touched on the psychological empowerment, and you touching on the financial empowerment. I think I've said this to you. I've said it to a number of women. I was taught that a woman, that's the teaching I got, that a woman brings certain set skills to an organization, they make the best leaders. I was taught that. And the reserve, reserve, the reserve of women in certain situations, greater than men. Their reserves run deeper than men. For example, a man would not, in most cases, would not be in a situation for far too long. He finds a way to move away or move on from it. And the woman, because of this depth of reserve she has, she sticks it through.
She has capacity.
She has to, the reserve I'm talking about. So,
Emotional
but how
resilience.
do we empower a woman to understand? Yes, you may have the reserve. You use the word capacity, but how do we empower a woman or a person or a partner in a situation where there's this dependency? Yes, we admit it. But how do we empower them to understand that your life is more important?
Go ahead.
I think that can happen through healing and helping a woman to understand her values and setting boundaries at a very early stage. You know, growing up, the Ministry of Youth back then had programs, and they used to come into the school. And those programs through the youth department is one where I shine through. And the thing is, the very thing is, at that stage they teach you about self-confidence. That's how I know Cardell as well too, right? They teach you about self-confidence and so many more other things there. And one of the most important thing is grooming and understanding your value. If you as a woman understand your value, nobody can step grounds there, right? And sometimes women are afraid to speak out. There were times when I was afraid to speak out, but of course I had to use my voice, and it cost relationship. And at that time, I didn't fear anything. I pick up the phone and I call and I say, enough is enough. This is not going to happen anymore.
Yeah.
And I kept pressing for it.
Understood.
What I wanted to add to that is sometimes, James, when violence is, done to you as a woman, you internalize that as something that you deserve. Maybe it's my fault. Maybe I did something wrong to deserve this because he loves me. Why would he do something like this to me? And we own that abuse as if it's our fault. And when you live in a society like Guyana, when the gruesome things happen and it reaches to the media and you see the level of victim blaming that we see on social media, we always find a way to validate.
She had a man.
It's
she
always
give him blow.
She was cheating. She don't do what she gotta do at the house. The what is that? The cock going roam. All kind of stupid reasons we find to validate abuse. Even from sexual abuse of children. We condone those things. James. So it requires a cultural shift too. That's why I come back to the fact that we have a responsibility. Yesterday was the vigil for that young lady that lost her life. And obviously this situation, is causing national outrage. And you may wonder why. I feel like people are just really exhausted of domestic violence. People are exhausted of people, women dying and it becoming just another statistic. So I'm really happy to see that people are not letting this go and the fight needs to continue. We need definitely. From every level. But one of the things, I had an interesting conversation with a friend yesterday, and she said that she's not going to go to the vigil because she doesn't have confidence that it's going to make much of a difference. And the reality is we do live in a society, because of how we approach this particular issue, people don't have the confidence that changes are going to be made. So I want you to understand that women are fearful for their lives. They are feeling stuck in this situation, but at the same time, they don't know what resources are available out there. And I also want to say the relationship that I was in, where I was abused, it was a very isolated situation, meaning that, my family and friends lived far off, my family lived away. And so, in a lot of the situations, you become like this person is your everything. You're dependent. This is your system, your ecosystem. This is all that you know. And so, outside of that, you cannot see how you would be able to operate, how you'd be able to thrive unless you truly step out of it. So it's not as easy to walk away from it. And a lot of people say, like, women just stay. It's just not the case. But as a man on the panel, I know
Yeah,
you're the host.
before you throw me in that, I was waiting for that. Honestly,
Right?
I was waiting for that.
I have to ask.
Yeah, I was
have
waiting
to
for
ask.
that. Yeah.
You touched on the trauma that a lot of persons grew up with, and I think when we're having conversations about women, men cannot be isolated.
Yeah.
And
Cannot.
this is a situation where we need men at the table. So from your perspective as a man, like, what are your thoughts on
Yeah.
it?
Well, I grew up in a Christian home. I grew up with men who love their wives. I went to a church where the pastor preached, you gotta buy the women things. Shout to Pastor Crawford. He did, man. He said you gotta take care of them, buy the women things. So I grew up in a culture which I've never seen. My dad raised his hand at my mom, any of my uncles. I've never seen it. We didn't grow up with that intimate partner violence. I've never seen it. The first time I saw it, I think, was um, I don't want to mention the names, but right to Lillian Dahl, obliquely opposite us, I see he's deceased now. He was hitting his wife. I was about 14 or 13, or around that age. That's the first time I actually saw um, a man beating a woman. I've seen it a lot since. Um, I even have a message that someone who called me, and I had to call the police. Superintendent Dufu, good night, sir. He was very prompt in sending a patrol vehicle to the residence to try to. And he was arrested. He's been prosecuted because the victim reached out to me and I said, James, there's a message, and I want to read this message because you put in the men on spot. I want to put the men on spot in two regards. This is the message, so people understand that this perspective we're talking about. This is the guy is saying, this life in Guyana is pure embarrassment because of you. And I'm glad I reached this far. That's him being arrested, so I can take a real step out. F you and you, baby, which is his child. She's actually pregnant with his child. I wish you and the baby dead, and I don't like you wish, and I don't like you. Wish you dead now. Me wish death on you and that baby. No, that gotta be from a very dark place. You're
And you
coming from
notice the
a
pattern?
yeah. So I'm gonna say this from a man's perspective. I can't relate, and I'm honest here. Like for men who abuse a woman, I can't relate. I can't put myself in that shoes to say, well, oh, it's because of this they do this.
Yeah.
I know in some instances, I know women to make up stories. I could attest to that. Make up stories of a man doing this, doing that,
Yeah.
to get him out the house, to paint him a different light, and that kind of thing. So, from a man's perspective, personally, I can't relate. But I could say this from the experience I've had. I think men need to be taught to be men. And this gentleman, I actually was there at the home, and my words to him was, "Be a man," because he was certain things were happening. Like he wasn't putting his woman. He was hearing stuff and hearing things about her, and he was listening to the things he was hearing, and not listening to his partner. So I'm saying you gotta be a man. You gotta put your woman first. That's my last words to him. You gotta be a man. The man that talk the foolishness about your wife, your child, your future mother, your child. You got the man in the same house.
Oh wow.
I had to put the man house. I had to actually go put the man out the house. And told you can't come spreading these rumors, totally false. And the two persons in a back and forth. So For him, I knew it was insecurity.
Right.
He was extremely insecure.
Mm-hmm.
He heard that the girl was talking to her ex, which is completely untrue. The girl actually put the ex aside. And
But even if James,
yeah, but I'm just
even
saying,
if
I'm just saying
James,
this, I'm just looking, I'm just trying to get into his
yes,
head right now.
Mhm.
So he's insecure. He thinks this girl is probably talking to the guy and he wants to react in this kind of way. So I know insecurity plays a big part
Yes.
in
Yeah.
men reacting how they react.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing that I know certain e- experience with certain men is that a strong woman, they can't really take a strong woman. You know, it's like, so certain men, the woman they have to be a docility about them.
Yes.
A submissiveness. And I don't mind submissive is good. I love submissiveness. As a man, I love submissiveness. But I love a strong woman.
And women love submissiveness
Yeah,
too, but
yeah.
women want to submit to a leader.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, what I want to hear from you, and I think something that comes up as a foundational issue from a man's perspective is men are not really given a lot of avenues to vent, to be open about what they're really going through. There's a lot of pressure too that society places on men. And I wonder sometimes if not having that outlet to be yourself, to be a human. Yes, you said be a man, but what does being a man mean in the context of society? And also, if you don't have a healthy outlet or an opportunity to share even your emotions, you know, one of the things I wish we did in schools is teach our children about conflict resolve, conflict management. I think that transcends into adulthood, but even into business and everything else, every aspect of life. We don't know how to manage emotions. We don't know how to manage conflict. And as a result, we lash out. But from just based on what I said, what are your thoughts on that?
We have for me, I'm a different generation. You know, for me, there's no excuse. My venting is work. My venting and my release is work. You know, not to say I don't need to go speak to somebody or talk to somebody of what is bothering me or affecting me, but again, how I was brought up, you know, and my faith as well. I know my faith teaches me is to love my partner. You know, my faith teaches me that to provide and protect my partner. That's what my faith teaches me. So again, we have a number of avenues, and maybe I'm not the average person. So I don't want to be condescending. I don't want to be judgmental. But I think if men are exposed to faith in a greater way, if they're exposed to role models, if they're exposed to the basic teaching us to, you know, how to be responsible, because we're all tempted. We all get angry. Every single person gets angry. But I don't think when you get angry enough to, you know, you got a beautiful young woman as a partner and you're going and beating and kicking. And you know, stories I've heard of men hitting women while they're pregnant.
Yeah.
Men, stop it. I've heard too many stories. When I said I was going to discuss this, someone reached out to me, you know, and they mentioned this to me. Another young lady communicated, says, or the father of her two kids died, and I'm helping them to get their death certificate. And she's like, I didn't even want to think about this guy because of what he put me through, you know, whilst I was pregnant and that kind of thing. So we need, I don't want to say a greater focus, because I think there is a focus on men, but I think the institutions you speak of, starting with the family. I've had, my boy could tell you, Jassy, I've spoken to him a number of times. You gotta love women. You gotta speak to them differently. You gotta be. It's a different thing when you're dealing with a woman. You know, you can't be angry. You can't be cursing. You can't be this. You can't be that. I've taught that to him, so he knows if he's in a relationship how to treat a woman. And we need institutions on board. The family. You mentioned the schools. I think the schools play such a critical role in all this, because it's not the days where we have this high truancy. We have more schools in more communities that we never had schools before.
Yes.
So incorporate into the curriculum a program whereby mentorship is
Emotional
mentorship is key.
intelligence.
And you mentioned that word coping.
Yes.
Yeah, coping
You know,
mechanism.
a lot of I mean, like, these words might be like some strange to we don't we must say we don't have a high literate society.
Yes.
We got to understand that too. But it simply means that we must to deal with our emotions properly, deal with situations properly. You know, doesn't mean to cope. To deal with it properly, deal with it in the right way, in the right circumstances. It's not to lash out and to be abusive. We could manage it. And you know, Miles, one of the teachers a very important thing. He says nobody could make you angry.
Yeah.
And I've shared that most of a male group we have, all the males, but we have about 8 or 9 males and 1 female. And I shared that clip with them. No one could make you angry.
Yeah.
It's a choice.
Yeah.
So you lashing out, you cursing, you abusing down your partner, that's a choice.
Yes.
But what you mentioned about men too, you know, men are abused too.
Yeah.
I was going to bring up that point next. You know, there was that situation with the young man who was, I think he was conducting an interview talking about the fact that he's being abused by a woman. And that man became a meme, James.
A laughing stock.
He literally, and that's our approach. As I mean, if we want to be real honest, as Guyanese, that's our approach. We lean into what's dramatic, what's sensational, and we make everything trivial when this is a deeply rooted issue. You know, that man literally become a meme, and it discourages men from coming forward. It discourages victims from coming forward because we either make laugh off of people or we victim blame. We find a way to validate this situation. Like when you listen to some of the headlines regarding the recent issues, I'm like flabbergasted that before this case has gone through the court of law and the due diligence has been done and the investigations have been thoroughly done, we are calling it something else. We're calling it what we don't know it yet to be. And that's a dangerous precedent to set because the media, you know, the media is known as the fourth arm of government. It informs, it allows you to form opinions as a society. And we have to be very responsible when we're dealing with this. Because again, if situations are not dealt with in the appropriate way, it discourages people from, you know, how many more persons are being abused in this country, James?
And not just physically. I think a lot of men verbally abused.
A lot.
I maybe tend to focus on the physical a lot.
Yes.
But there's a lot of verbal abuse. There's a lot of persons who they try to snatch your self-esteem.
Yeah.
And women, I have to admit, as women, we use words.
Yeah, snatch a man's self-esteem.
We use words. we are very sharp with our words, and so we all have a responsibility. I want to read some of the comments online, James. No questions as yet based on what I see, but we see a lot. Everybody saying hello, big up yourself. But this guy, his name is Lance Henry. He's saying that men need to evolve and understand that it's okay to vent. Just surround yourself with positive people and have that conversation. One of the things you mentioned just now strike a note for me. I'm happy to hear that you are the caliber of man that you are and that you can't really resonate with this particular issue. But you know, as a woman, what I would love to see more of, I would love to see more men holding men accountable.
Yeah.
I don't think that happens enough.
No, I could tell it does, though. I could tell it does. I've had persons very close to me who would have been in situations, and I roughed them up afterwards. Nobody around me. I says, yo, not around me. You know, you gotta do better. Till a day like today, I could tell you, I check in regularly. How you and the wife, and I even said, boy, you know, you gotta live good with your wife. Because every time you mess up with your wife, me wife and me just get stories. So that's how often they check up on him.
Yeah.
If me and my partner got a little tiff, I said, boys, what you do the girl now? And you know, and he's like, say, James, here, I carry crush here, carry crush there. We're going to dinner, we're going to this, we're going to the other. He said, boy, I gotta pull myself up. So we do hold each other accountable. What we don't like
But
to
is
do
that a
though,
commonality? Is it a common
it
thing?
is, it is. Sorry,
Like
sorry, but
in a group of men.
yeah, but what we don't like to do
Mhm.
is to get involved. You remember, a lot of men just go in their feelings. You know, maybe you hear me talk before. We get controversial now. We got a lot of men who real men. That's go in their feelings too quick.
Mm.
So if you tell a man, look, hey, what you doing there? He might go in your feelings and then be like, hey, you got all that. And to be honest with you, sometimes we don't hear with the drama.
You got
Because I don't think men should be in drama.
Yeah.
You know, forgive me. I'm the little old-fashioned superstar. So before I gotta come to tell you X, Y, Z, and here you gotta go in your feelings and you start going there, I can say, look, I leave you on your own. You know. But men, I think men follow. Men follow. And I think the examples that are around, they're far and apart. The examples that we need them to see
Yeah.
are far and apart.
And a lot of men, I see this culture, they feel like they own a woman, right? This is my property.
A sense of belonging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's more deeper than that.
Okay.
Property.
You know, it's like, this is my property. I own her. I can do whatever I want to her. Whatever I say goes. And that there is very dangerous. It's something very dangerous emotionally to a woman. And to himself. And I say, like I said, healing needs to take place.
Yeah.
Educational awareness, emotional intelligence, mindfulness, and these type of things. Because if we're to create a space in our society that nurtures an individual emotionally, mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, we've got to have people who are responsible, but that is coming from a space that is not toxic, that is not harming, but is filled with love and compassion. And those are the type of values that we need to develop our country and our community and our space. And sometimes those are not the things that you see. You see some of the most horrible things. Sometimes you walk on the road and you just going doing your thing, and people just troubling you and picking problem with you, cat calling you, and if you don't respond to them, you get the most darkest things they would say.
You think you
Yeah,
You
yeah.
think you Zala.
You're ugly,
Very
and all, you
disrespectful.
know, like
I mean, we could chuckle at it now. I've seen so many situations of women being in a bus and
Yeah.
being harassed by men,
Oh,
being
God.
followed. James, whenever I go out, sometimes you go out with your friends, or sometimes you're just hanging out alone, and you're surrounded by men who are trying to get your attention. I mean, at one point I used to say my partner is here. I lie.
Yeah.
And then I literally had to start saying I'm a man.
Mhm.
Because like nothing works anymore. There's no people don't respect
boundaries.
boundaries anymore. And so we just have to, like you said, the value system is important, and it requires an overhaul of the entire system. I just wanted to touch quickly, because I know we're sort of running out of time. One of the things that I know the ministry has and has launched recently in several locations is the Hope and Justice Centers.
Yeah.
The Hope and Justice Centers, I mean, this is recently coming
Yeah.
to my knowledge. They provide a bunch of services for women in abusive situations. I mean, just the 914 hotline alone, I believe, received about 6,000 calls for 2024. I mean, that's just to give you the precedence of this issue that we're talking about. And also, as it relates to legal representation, annually, it is budgeted for about, I think, 500 cases for women to have legal representation in cases of domestic violence. So the help is available.
Yeah, we
James.
have
Yeah, it
the,
is.
we have the policy
The help is
framework.
available.
Everything is there. But
It's bridging that gap.
we're gonna have to do this again, because we know we have a lot of material to go through.
Yes, we didn't even
but,
get through
but
half
we
the
didn't get half the
itinerary.
material. We researched the topic. We haven't got I'm still on my first document here. We were going to share some stories with you, and we're gonna do this again. The reason why we're here, and we must thank Cardell for having us in the studio.
Likewise.
You know, it's over the river and the bridge is closing just so we don't want to be
We on
trapped.
the west
I can say
side.
that.
They
But
gonna give them a
when I
round
was
of
coming
applause.
over, I was look today. I was way up in Region 8 and coming back. I says, look, thank God this bridge is gonna be done, so we don't have all this hassle with the bridge.
4 lane.
Yeah, we got the
4
four lanes
lanes.
and everything. So we're gonna do this again.
Mhm.
Next, we're gonna continue. After this, we're gonna have a topic on Venezuela. I'm trying to get my good friend Captain Govaya and some other experts on that on the border issue. So, Jovan, Samantha, thank you again. Our audience, thank you for coming on. And I must say, a very, very thank you to our Consul General in Barbados, Mr. Harry Gill. You know, I call him Uncle Harry.
Yes.
He encourages me a lot. So, Uncle Harry, I know you're watching. Thanks for your encouragement at all times. So once again, thanks for tuning to Wading into the Controversy. We haven't even got controversial as yet. So we're going to do this again next week. It's going to be from 8 o'clock to 9:30 every Wednesday. Wading into the Controversy. I'm your host, James Anthony Bond. God bless.
Just a don't praise no one but him, so why should I? No put faith in a man, just look to the east and hail Shaddai. But faith without work is dead, so man never stop working yet. Although struggle is real, till I want it out stronger than steel. Dog man built for this the high firm, hustle every day so paper must earn. No faith in a God, so soon I might turn. When me pray for my way, me no make it wrong turn.